Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Better Unite Nonprofit Success webinar. My name is Leah Simmons. I am CEO and co-founder of Better Unite. It is such a pleasure to have all of you here today to enjoy and understand and learn much more about the Giving USA's 2025 report. We are going to break it all down, this information that just dropped this morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. We are going to learn much more about the report as well as gain insight with my good friend, Gail Perry. Gail, come on. Please show yourself. Welcome to the podcast, Gail. Hi, how are you?
Everybody, hello.
So I am so thrilled to have Gail here today. Let me take care of a couple of I almost said fundraising details, a couple, because that's all we're going to talk about is fundraising and major donors. But a couple of little housekeeping details before we get going. I'm so happy to see, I can see that we've got some new folks on the call today, and we also have some clients. I love seeing all of that. If you have questions, if you haven't joined us before, please feel free to write those questions in the chat or the Q&A section of your Zoom bar. Gail and I are going to chat for a bit about all things giving and the Giving USA report, but then we would love to answer any questions that you all have. If you are watching this later and watching the recording, then you can always email any questions that you have to support@betterunite.com. We can direct those to Gail and get the answers that you might need there. Let's see, I think that's about it. So that's my brief. Let me quickly, Gail, embarrass you by reading a little bit of your illustrious bio. Gail Perry, she is an MBA and a CFRE. She is the founder and president of the Gail Perry Group. She's a philanthropic leader, keynote speaker, and an author with over 30 years of experience, renowned for her positivity, talking about joy in fundraising, expertise, and insight. Her company, Gail Perry Group, helps nonprofits reach extraordinary fundraising and capital campaign goals. As an internationally recognized fundraising consultant, Gail has keynoted over 100 fundraising conferences around the world. That's very impressive and quite a travel track record. And she's also worked with organizations such as the CDC Foundation, Duke Cancer Center, the Smithsonian, the Trust for Public Land, and the U.S. Olympic Committee. She is listed as one of America's top 20 fundraising experts and was named one of LinkedIn's top voices in philanthropy in 2020. Gail is also considered an international leader in successful capital campaign strategies, and she co-authored the #1 capital campaign textbook, Capital Campaigns: Strategies That Work. Her best-selling book, Fired Up Fundraising: Turn Board Passion into Action, is recognized as the gold standard guide to building successful fundraising boards. Gail, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is fun. It's always interesting to talk about Giving USA. Big news, be on the front page of everybody's local newspaper or their email news, and your board members will be asking questions because they're going to see this in the media. So before we get started, I would love to know who's here. Can you say hello to me in the chat box and tell me the name of your organization and where you're located? It would be great fun to see who all is in our wonderful nonprofit community today.
I love that. All right. Well, Gail, I think let's dive right in, right? So let's start kind of big picture trends. What stands out to you the most in this year's Giving USA report? Anything that like completely surprised you or that just like you're like, yep, of course, I was expecting this.
Neither one of those, but there was encouraging news. And that is that Americans are continuing to give robustly. And everybody worries about donor fatigue and everybody wants to back off. You have to realize that last year was a very, very strong year for charitable giving. I have my notes up here. The giving totaled, let's see, by individuals, $392 billion, and it grew 8.2%. Which is just significant, even, and a growth of 5.1% when adjusted for inflation. So consider 8.2% in cash outlay. I mean, I send my $100 to my favorite organizations, maybe $250, maybe more. Your donors are consistently giving these amounts. Now, maybe inflation was the topic that we were talking a lot about last year. Maybe inflation cut into the overall value of these gifts, but the dollars, Americans are generous, everybody, and I want you to be encouraged to keep it up.
I think that is such a great and what a wonderful note to kick off this conversation on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I've started sharing, Gail. I don't know if you can see, hopefully everyone can see our graphic here that was
Mhm.
provided to us by Giving USA. So $592.5 billion. That's our total number. That's the 2024 giving. That's a record high. And so Gail, let me kick that back to you. Can you give us some context around that? What and what is this? How do we translate this as 2025 fundraisers, given that this number comes from 2024?
Oh, fun. Okay. Well, first of all, let's unpack a little bit of this chart because there's some interesting factoids in here if you look at trends. For
Hmm.
example, the 66% of the pie chart here given by individuals, guess what, everybody? It used to be in the 80% range of the pie chart that individuals were giving like 82%, and now we're down to 66%. However, foundation giving has gone way up because way back over the past 10 or 20 years, foundation giving used to be much, much less percentage of the pie. So my reading of this is that that many individuals are giving through foundations, and between the foundation gifts and the individuals is the individual person, everybody, who is making the difference in your fundraising totals more than institutional foundations and corporations.
I think that's an incredible distinction, actually, and it's something that's really good to hear and to see that we're still seeing the bulk of the giving coming from, like you said, these one human person to a mission or an organization.
And I think everybody is so afraid of major donor fundraising, which is what we teach. And it is the one-on-one conversations with wealthy, passionate people who are really devoted to your cause. Those are the conversations that bring in the significant part of your revenue.
There's the point, right? Yeah, exactly. That's incredible. So
Yeah,
now you did mention this. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Gail.
I want to speak a little bit to the chart on the right about where the different sectors in the nonprofit world,
Mhm.
where all this went. So religion has always been the top recipient of all the different sectors within our glorious nonprofit community. And religion has been declining and declining and declining, but it is still the largest. And I just finished serving as stewardship chair for my local church, Episcopal church. It was quite a job, but we raised more money than ever last year, and we even had year-end gifts that just came in without being asked, and so that we had a huge surplus in our annual giving, which again reflects on the generosity from 2024. Now, one of the reasons people were so generous last year, and this bleeds over into 2025, is that the stock market, the S&P 500 was up, what, 24% or
There's
so?
a lot, yeah.
It's a lot of data that says that people are more generous when they feel economically secure and they have a positive outlook about the economy. So therefore, we are seeing a lot of hesitancy about this current year that we're in.
So I'm curious too. Last year was a political year, a presidential election year. This wasn't a question that we talked about, but I'm pulling an audible on you, Gail. Sorry, but I'm curious about these numbers look so good, even with that layer on top of it, right? So do you think it was the strength of the S&P 500, the economy that kind of drove even this big of it? Because this is a decent size increase over 23. Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, the largest, I mean, individuals give out of assets like the stock that they own, and they give out of their cash. And the majority of the wealth in America is held in some type of asset, of course. And so last year was such a wonderful opportunity for people to give appreciated stock if they have a stock portfolio, and you can get a lovely tax deduction and it doesn't come out of your pocket, your regular monthly income. And that's one reason why we saw giving by individuals go up. You know, it was a robust economy, even though there was a real divisive political campaign that didn't really impact.
Didn't stop it. That's so fascinating to
I'm
me.
worried. I mean, last fall, everybody said, "Oh, donor fatigue. How can we ask?" Everybody's it's like a vacuum cleaner right there. I mean, billions were raised to support the campaigns.
Which just feels like it flies in the face of what I've always understood, which is during a, presidential election year, we'll see typically numbers drop, but that was just not the case last year.
And also it's giving over time. There's a great chart somewhere of the stock market, U.S. stock market, ups and downs, and giving is a lagging indicator of the stock market. It follows the stock market. So if the stock market's going way up, giving will go up maybe 2 or 3 months later. And if it goes down, giving also, it takes a while for giving to shift.
Interesting, interesting. So you did also mention inflation. I'm going to stop sharing our chart here because it doesn't speak to that part. But you mentioned inflation, and then when adjusted for inflation, it's a little bit it's a difference. It's not a different story. It's just a not quite as grand of a story. How do we interpret that nuance? I'm obviously not doing a very good job of it right now. So please give us some
Right.
guidance.
I might be, my personal thing is that I brush off inflation. I mean, inflation,
Brilliant.
you can't really raise money about around an inflation message.
That makes sense.
Uh, be-
Yeah.
because donors want to give to change the world. You know, they don't want to give to just, keep on where we are right now. They're giving to help someone make a difference in some way. And you can probably you want to temper when you report to your board, you want to remind everybody that you have to cut these increases by maybe 50% or some level due to inflation. But the overall message is still that giving was strong.
I totally agree with that, and it's interesting because that is always a very strong call out, and I believe in 2023, and I could have this wrong, but I believe in 2023 things looked like they had risen, but actually adjusted for inflation, it kind of looked like it was down. But this year we're still, regardless, either way, it's still up.
Yeah, and the peak giving ever was 2021.
That's right.
And
Post-COVID.
that was in the middle of the pandemic. And then it dropped considerably during after the pandemic, and now we're barely creeping back up to where we were before.
Those pendulum swings, they have to settle at some point.
No, I'm just overall the news is good.
Yeah. Well, you've teed me up perfectly for my next question, which is so now we see this information, now we have it. What trends are you and your colleagues at Gail Perry Group, what are you seeing in how the major donors are behaving, how they're giving, and how has that changed since the immediate post-pandemic era, 2021 to today?
Well, everybody, drum roll. Okay, this is a big deal. We are advising capital campaigns around the country. We are talking in our private feasibility study interviews with major mega donors who have the potential to give million plus gifts. And you know what these donors are telling us? They are gung ho. They want to see their favorite organizations prosper and be solid, and they are giving. Our clients are closing $1 million gifts in their campaigns plus. So I think that you should take heart that we are seeing the organizational leaders feeling hesitant and the donors are gung ho. So it's our
Interesting.
small that may be holding us back when the donors are ready to give. That's the takeaway. Isn't that interesting?
I have chill bumps, and I feel like saying, you heard it first here, folks. This is very, yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, but can we talk a little bit about this year again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of the conversation in the Giving USA report was cautionary about this current year. And remember, I talked about that individuals are going to hold back a little bit when they're not feeling so economically secure. And that is a
Mhm.
huge factor in generosity. So I want everybody to temper uh, their expectations. Keep your optimism up, keep your plan solid, keep your donor communication up, but be careful about setting your goals because we want to see you be successful and feel successful. But I would set some conservative fundraising goals. We're eagerly awaiting the first indication of what giving looks like in 2025. We haven't seen anything yet that we really trust yet.
True data on that. Yeah. And there is just there's a level of uncertainty that's out in the stock market has had some very wild swings to your point about the S&P. So it's looking okay right now, but it's definitely gone up and down. And yeah,
Overall economic uncertainty is causing a lot of people to hold back.
it seems like there's a lot of money on the sidelines right now.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think that a lot of my friends and my family, we are being very careful about major purchases right now. We can wait and see, we can push them off. Let's see how things go, how the
Let's see
economy
how.
goes.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting brand new time. So last year in 2025, or excuse me, in 2024, mega gifts were at about $11 billion. So, and that trend, that is a number that continues to rise as well. What should we make of that trend? How would how would you parse that for our group?
They define a mega gift, get this everybody, as gifts of 600 million plus. And that is a very large gift.
Very big gift.
Those mega gifts were roughly 3% of overall giving, which is really in line with recent years, although it is higher than the pandemic era. So, we can all hope for a mega gift. I do think the mega gifts tend to go to institutions that have invested a lot of money in their fundraising programs, and they are able to shower love and attention on their top donors who are billionaires, clearly. These are
Right.
the billionaire gifts who can give 600 million away.
Yes, that's pretty much the only those only ones. So you don't kind of buy into the thesis that these mega donors are reshaping philanthropy, or how would you respond to that statement?
Mega donors often want to throw their weight around.
Yeah,
And you have to be careful how much influence. There's a lot of controversy about how much influence a large donor can have and should have. And I'm not going to touch that one
yeah.
because that's really a policy issue within every organization. And there are also ethical guidelines that govern those practices.
Mhm.
But mega donors can have enormous influence. But they're not going to make a $600 million gift to a small organization. They're going to make it to some major institution like a medical center or a university.
Well, switching from mega donors then back to our sweet spot area of major donors. How about let's move there. How could a smaller, I can see that we've got some smaller nonprofits on the line today in in the list over here, wherever your chat is. But so how do smaller nonprofits, which is also my background, with limited resources, how do they effectively engage and grow relationships with major donors in this environment?
This is one of my favorite questions. And so everybody here, if you're a small organization, you can raise big money, but your key strategy is to narrow down your focus to a very small number of donor prospects who
Okay.
are passionate and wealthy. In fact, I'm a great fan of the Canadian researcher Penelope Burke, who's now retired, and she always said you can raise more money with fewer donors. And so don't worry about the fact that your donor base is small, because within your donor base, there are going to be a certain percentage of people who have major gift potential. So I would start by leveraging my existing database and identifying donors who've already given at higher levels
Hmm.
or shown consistent support over time. And you have to remember that even small donors still may have significant wealth or capacity. And so you have to sort of look for wealth indicators beyond just the donation size. I have a friend who works at UNC Chapel Hill, and if a $1,000 gift just comes in out of the blue, she calls the donor. She picks up the phone and calls them,
Yeah.
thanks them, and tries to find out a little bit more, ask them a few questions about that might reveal some level of the enthusiasm and also some capacity questions. Her favorite capacity question is, well, are you planning on taking a vacation this summer? And oh, we're taking a cruise around the world. That would be probably a major
Now I know something that I did not know before from that $1,000 check.
So small organizations can raise money successfully as long as you don't the gala, the corporate, the foundation. You don't spread yourself too thin and fret about employee giving, about all the different areas that you could be doing. Be disciplined and do a few areas well.
More strategic, more surgical in your that's wonderful advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so one other point that they talked about in the report, and I know Gail, Perry Group, and BetterUnite are both members of the Giving Institute, which supports Giving USA. And we at our last set of meetings had a wonderful presentation on this great transfer of wealth that's coming at us, $70 trillion that will be moving from the boomer generation to all of the other generations. So how do fundraisers today, and I've heard this question so many times, and I'm actually just very curious to get your take on it. How can
Uh-huh.
fundraisers today position themselves so that they can benefit from that huge wealth transfer of wealth in the long term?
What a great question, because people fret about planned giving and they think planned giving has got to be something over there that's going to cost a lot of money. And the real successful way to create more legacy gifts or estate gifts, which are gifts in somebody's will, is to just integrate it into everything you do. It shouldn't be an afterthought or a niche program. You make it a central part of your donor communications and your appeals year round. So that you at the bottom of every appeal, whether it's digital or direct mail, you say, is our organization in your will? You know, would you like information about an estate gift to our organization? Just over and over and over, that clear reminder to donors that they can support your organization in many different ways. And there are other strategies too, because often planned giving gets way too much jargon around it, way too technical. And you really want to have information on your website about your tax ID number, the formal name of your organization, and a paragraph. I've also read that you can put on your website literally a paragraph to insert, and somebody can insert it into their will. So you want to make it easy.
Oh, so just literally copy paste into the will from the organization's website. That's really great advice.
And the last one is, use story. Storytelling is so powerful. Human beings love to listen to a story, especially one with a little drama. And so the more storytelling you can do around your legacy donors. But look, there's boring donor profiles and they're exciting donor profiles. So make them interesting to read.
I love that. And I think that also the incorporating it throughout the year, throughout all of your communication takes away I mean, fear that I, as a fundraiser, have had about, I don't want to go up to somebody and talk to them about them dying. That feels like a very awkward conversation. So then if it's just always there, then it's just always there and it's so much easier. That's incredible advice.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move from the generation that's about to transfer the wealth to the recipient of this great intergenerational transfer, millennials and Gen Zs.
Hmm.
I know, right? I've heard this question a lot as well, but we keep being told that they give to causes, but they don't give to institutions. That, just because their family always gave to this organization is no reason that they are going to give to this organization. I always hate lumping entire groups that encompass millions and billions of people into having a single ethos, but we're going to do that right now. What does it mean for donor messaging and stewardship? Should this be true? In 2025, how should we communicate as fundraisers with the Gen Zs and the millennials?
It's really interesting, the tendencies of different generations to consume media and how they read and how they want to be reached. Because my daughters are in their 30s and they never listen to the voicemail messages I leave on their phones. They would rather text. And and many of their friends professionally are uncomfortable talking on the telephone. And that's the 30 somethings. And then you've got the older people who very old. The older people, remember, they're the ones with all the money and with the assets, because they've already educated their children, they've already lived their spending lives, and now they're looking to give back. And there's a lot of data that confirms that information, but they'll read every word that you send them, and they may not necessarily want to text at all, and the computer literacy may be up or down depending. So
Mhm.
let's talk about how you reach the Gen Z and millennial donor population, because they're generous, they are devoted to causes. However, you have to reach them where they are. And so if you want to appeal to those age groups, which is very important, they're the donors of the future. You have to use platforms like Instagram and TikTok and perhaps Twitter or X to reach the donors. And you can create engaging content that's shareable, that highlights your cause and invites people to participate. Wouldn't that be fun? And I think also that the younger people um, are very tuned in to inauthentic messaging, and
Mm,
anything that seems formal, overly polished, or corporate language. I'm sitting here, I'm not wearing a jacket or pearls today. We are showing up as more casual, and we're showing up as being, and you want to show up as a fundraiser as being more relatable and genuine in the voice. The voice that you send out in terms of the tone of your communications can be changed for different age groups. And one other thing about these particular age groups is that they're very interested in they're influenced by their peers. And one data point is that 79% of Gen Z said that they would donate if they were asked by a friend or a family member. Can you imagine that?
yeah.
Peer-to-peer fundraising like giving days, where they make fundraising fun. They encourage competition. Let's all join in and help this one organization. That very effective strategies.
I love that. So a more kind of in real life human touch with our older generations, and then younger, we got to get to them where they are, where they live, when on the socials, on the Instagram, through some texting, not voicemails. Yeah, I love that. And it's very easy now to pivot. And like you said, right, your messaging can change depending on who you're sending. So being much more targeted in that too is super helpful. I love that. So in terms of data use, what metrics should organizations prioritize tracking so that they can understand what you were describing, which is the pipeline, the donors of tomorrow, right? Like how are we tracking and understanding those folks?
Well, metrics can be a double-edged sword because what gets measured gets done, everybody.
Oh,
So
good
if you
line.
are tracking the size of your newsletter list as a metric that you report on regularly, you better believe that your team is going to focus on newsletter subscribers. If you are tracking the number of qualified major donors that you've identified, that's going to be a metric that everybody works really hard to accomplish. Uh, and if you have a major gift program, the metrics you want to track, you want to track your pipeline. What donors do you have? In a discovery process, which donors, or how many donors do you have who are actively qualified and being worked on by a major gift officer or by anybody? Smaller organizations may not have major gift officers, but they can assign prospects to individual staff members just for nurturing. So you want to track the proposals that are outstanding, the gifts that come in, the percentage of proposals that are funded, or the percentage of, you ask for 100,000 and you get 70, you want to track that percentage. So people get tied up in the metrics. It's important to track some very easily traceable activities and not to overcomplicate it. Because remember, your board, there's a famous saying about metrics and reporting on fundraising to board members. And the saying is, do your numbers or they will be done to you.
That's
So
great.
you educate your board and provide relevant information and explain why it's useful rather than them asking for information, which may be difficult to develop.
Right. We're all meaning making machines. So lead the story yourself. I love that. That's great. That's great advice. So let's move back now to the initial conversation that we were having around foundations, also adding in some corporate giving. So corporate giving has reached some highs, but it's still pretty small relatively. It's still the smallest slice of our pie. Is that a missed opportunity, or is it just the nature of the beast, or how should we think about corporate philanthropy?
I was talking to a small organization in Westchester County, New York State, just yesterday, and they are the home of mega international corporations. And this little mental health agency is fretting because they don't have any gifts from these corporations. However, to get into there through the bureaucracy is quite a journey. And we have always recommended a corporate prospects are, excuse me, great, but you have to have an inside track. You have to have
Mm.
somebody in the company who will help you through. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting. There's a lot of competition in that area, and we've also seen corporations cut way back and shift their fundraising or their contributions more toward their marketing purposes. So the contributions are supporting marketing, which means that they're gonna, if you are having a gala for soccer moms, so to speak, who are having young children, a diaper manufacturer or a daycare manufacturer or a center may be very interested in sponsoring you and making gifts so that they can get in front of your clientele, your demographic.
Multiple.
So it's a different kind of approach. It's often more of a sales approach and more transactional than it is a charitable.
How would you advise for organizations, again, maybe a smaller organization, what amount of effort should they put into cultivating those types of relationships?
I'd work my network and try to get some board members.
The board members, that's what yeah.
Do it so fast because lots of times board members from major corporations understand that that's one way they really can serve their organization is to bring in corporate gifts.
Yeah.
Use,
And
use
again,
an inside track.
the what we were talking about the money that's kind of out there waiting. I think I would say that's probably doubly true for corporate America right now, that with uncertainty in the air, they're not sure where to put their money. So
Careful about beating my head against the wall for corporations.
that yeah.
I always advise everybody, look, make it easy for yourself. Focus on the prospects that look like they're interesting and fun, and you enjoy yourself, and don't stay up all night fretting that donor A or B will not give you the time of day, because there are plenty of other people who are very passionate, who would love to hear from you.
Oh, that's a wonderful reframe. So foundations now, just again
Yeah.
jumping back, our foundations, they gave over 100 billion again. How can nonprofits strengthen the institutional relationships that they might maybe already have or begin to build?
That again is such a wonderful question. When I was a frontline fundraiser, we treated our foundation donors like they were way high up on a hill. We were a little bit afraid of them,
That's me too.
they're coming for a
Yeah.
visit. We have to do the report. But you can make friends with your corporate I mean, with your foundation donors, make friends with them. Be willing to share if you have challenges. And if a grant comes through and all of a sudden the program is messing up, and you need to ask them if you can redirect the funding. If you are honest and genuine in your communications with your institutional funders, they will believe in you, and you will have more trust and credibility, and you will gain a longer term relationship with this foundation. One of the challenges with foundation funding is that they'll turn on that spigot of money and then they'll turn it off
Hmm.
because they have new priorities. And also they like to fund special programs, God help us, rather than mission-centric work. So you have to be careful, nurture, nurture, nurture. And I think everybody is just, they hold back on their communications. And they are also overly formal in their communications. And so if you can just sort of let your hair down and be genuine and authentic, you get so much further along. And you have
That's the
real,
yeah.
real authentic relationships with people who want to help you.
That's the thread that I'm hearing through all of these that you're making, Gail, which is just being authentic and being true to yourself is, not changing based on generation or, maybe some of the messaging or the communication styles change, but the through line is the authentic, person, the fundraiser, as well as the organization.
Yeah, let me ask the chat, everybody listening, give me some feedback. Is this helpful? Do you have any questions? I see we've got
We've
Cindy.
got a couple of questions already here in the chat too. Let's see. Let me try and kind of, can you
Okay,
see the Q&A there, Gail?
I have my chat stream open, but not the Q&A. Let's see.
Okay, so this is actually a clarifying question about some of the data. So I'm going to go ahead and read this question from Lori. She says, do these figures exclude the amount that are being contributed into the purgatory of donor advised funds? So Gail and I were discussing DAFs before we got on this call. So, and then since those dollars are dormant, sometimes for decades. So is that happening? And then we need to understand growth of available dollars. For example, dollars charities can actually access and put to use in the here and now.
That is a great question, Lori. We are fretting about the answer to your question because we have those questions too. It's confusing because Giving USA tracks gifts to they call it public society benefit organizations, and that's Fidelity and Schwab. And so if I'm making a gift to my donor advised fund, it's not going to charitable purpose, but it is counted as a gift to a public society benefit organization, which really I think distorts the tracking. There's no way
Yeah,
around it. And then if I make a gift to my local community foundation for, say, I set up a donor advised fund in the community foundation, it's tracked under foundations. So, Lori, smart question.
yeah, you've highlighted.
I have been fussing at the Giving USA people for years about how they're tracking TAFs, and it continues to be somewhat muddy.
We'll get there, I'm sure. But yeah, I agree. There's definitely some, and I think actually Lori's next question is pointing to another potential gap. Although I'm not sure that. Well, I'm going to read your question, Lori. Historically, growth in giving has primarily benefited the top 8 to 10% of charities versus being distributed among all charities of all sizes. Do you have figures showing if giving to organizations with annual revenue of $1 million or less has increased or declined in 2024 and in recent years? I don't know that that's the focus at all of Giving USA, although I could be wrong. Gail, do you have insight there?
I think that kind of information is going to be in the FEP tracking, the fundraising effectiveness project that tracks giving to donor retention and giving to different sizes of organizations. I didn't see anything in Giving USA that really tracks it down, but it's a great question.
It is a great question. And Lori, we will link the FEP report in the chat and in the recording as well.
But I will also say over time, there are trends in the past that show that when giving grows, it's the larger organizations that get a larger share of the growth in giving, and smaller organizations who do not typically invest in well-rounded fundraising programs, who are losing their donors and losing their gifts. So it's a factor of small organizations being willing to invest in their infrastructure and building up a professional fundraising operation so they can grow. I have this saying when I do I do a lot of board workshops around the country and the world, and I'll say to the board members, okay, you've got $1 here, and you want to put it all in a program because you've got hungry children, you've got diseases to cure, you urgently need that money. But if you don't put some part of that dollar into your organizational infrastructure, you will never grow. You will stay right where you are on the treadmill. And so that's one way to paint a picture so people understand the importance of really internal investments. And also, we have a question about, let's see, small organizations, small social service organizations who are doing work around social justice, whose budgets have been completely diminished suddenly overnight. We are getting calls, our consulting companies getting calls from these kinds of organizations. And if you have a donor base, we can help you grow that donor base. But it's never too late to invest in fundraising. I will say that traditionally, many social service organizations have looked at fundraising and marketing as things that are not really what they want to do. A little bit of distaste, we don't want to ask anybody for money. But fundraising is really building a base of gung-ho supporters around your mission, people who will stand by you, people who believe in your work. They're your supporters, they're an organizational asset, your stakeholders. Your donors are your stakeholders.
I
So if
love that.
you change your view of fundraising, you can get out there with a great big smile, throw porch parties this summer, and bring in a whole new donor population.
And I love that you use the word infrastructure instead of overhead. I've always hated when people call the the building blocks of nonprofits, which are the people that work there, the fundraising that needs to get done, the technology that you need to do those things, as some sort of like, overhead. It sounds like that word sounds like it's a,
Heavy.
laying on us. It's heavy, right? And instead of being like what we use to build. So that's a
Mhm.
wonderful way to put it. And thinking about fundraising as part of that infrastructure as well. So, so key. So you did touch on this, but I'm going to read Ruth's question in the Q&A also. Can you touch briefly on your perspective regarding federal grant opportunities in this environment? You were talking
Mhm.
about funding being
I will.
slashed.
Ruth, I did a presentation with a young one of our young consultants on developing friendly relationships with elected officials.
Oh, that's great.
We did a presentation at AFP Icon, and we're also doing the same presentation for the North Carolina Philanthropy Conference in September. If you're anywhere near, come join us. But Cassie on our team worked in the federal government level, and she was a gatekeeper for our local congressman. And she said that your elected officials ran for office because they wanted to help. They thought they could help, and that is their motivation. And she also said that there's very little acrimony among staffers on the Hill, or even the acrimony is held for the public arguments, not private. And there's a lot of working together on behalf of constituents across party lines. But she said the staffers are the ones who make everything happen. So we have some material on our website from that presentation. GailPerry.com. There's a search bar at the top. You can look up. And by the way, we're having a free public webinar on Thursday on major gift success secrets for 2025. We've got 5 points strategies we want to offer to everybody to sort of shift slightly to secure more major gifts this year.
We will put links to all of those in the chat, as well as send those out to you with this recording and in a LinkedIn post following this. So I'm so happy to hear about that. I really do think, and I knew that you all were doing this, Gail, the kind of teaching nonprofits how to communicate with, and frankly, just not be afraid of elected officials. But I
Yeah,
mean, honestly, going a step further and getting close to, or even knowing, introducing yourself to their staff is huge. I live here in Austin, Texas, and the state capitol is like right down the street from us. And it's when I was in college, I worked with a lobbyist actually, and it was super fun. And I was at the Capitol all the time, so it was demystified for me. But I do know that that is such a common sentiment that that nonprofits don't really think of elected officials as any sort of ally. I couldn't agree with you and Cassie more that this crosses party lines, that the most vast majority are there to do good and work with other common good organizations.
absolutely. I'll give you a hot tip for local. There's a lot of money at the local and state levels, everybody. I mean, not just federal. And if your federal grant is cut, go look at state and local officials, and there's buckets of money everywhere. And so I was working on a capital campaign for a botanical garden in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and we decided to form a government relations committee. We called it
Oh,
the Government Relations Committee. And we had two former mayors and the current mayor's top fundraiser. And these guys, they were off. I mean, they were off. They knew where the money was, when it came along, who made the decisions, and how to influence them.
and at Better Unite, we work with a lot of events, and I can't tell you how few events I go to that have elected officials there that are invited. And if you invite them, you should recognize them because that's helpful to them as well. But it's also very helpful to you in a really good way. I would suggest that to, get to know them and to invite them and their staff to whatever your events are.
They will come because they want to
They
be
will
involved.
come.
And that you give them the mic. Uh-oh.
Uh, you better have a time limit up there.
Yeah.
A nice big hook. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of our time, but we've actually already covered some of the Q&A, but please put any more that you have in the question and answer or in the chat. I got the FEP report in there, but I will get a couple of other links in there too. But Gail, I've got another question for you that's a little bit of a kind of sum up question for us. If a development team had to do one single thing differently in the next 6 months, and that was what my question said, but I'm actually going to expand it. So give me an answer for 6 months, and then maybe 1 year, and then maybe 2 to 5 years. Like they need to do something differently in each of those time frames. Based on this report, what would your suggestion be?
I hate to tell you, but it's going to be the suggestion I always make.
That's good.
And that is, I'm in the South, you probably tell by now. Send love to your donors.
Hmm.
Communicate with your donors more often. Be authentic, be transparent, tell stories, invite them in, call them to say thank you. Focus on your donor retention because organizations are typically losing about 40% of all their donors every year who do not renew. And so you want to keep your donor base close. You want to keep them passionate. You want to ask them to volunteer for you, give them things to do. Don't just treat them as people who give us money and we only communicate with them when they have money. So also another, I know you asked for one strategy, the other strategy is
I love it. Go for it.
narrow down your focus. I've said that before, but you can raise more money with fewer prospects. Shower love and attention to the people who deserve it and who are showing signs that they really want to help.
Oh, that's great advice. And that's wonderful advice at 6 months, at 1 year, and at 25 years.
Yeah.
Um, so how should nonprofits then think about balancing major gifts? We're going to leave mega donors out of this. Major gifts versus mid-level versus grassroots donors or micro donors, even as I've heard them termed. How do you balance the focus in this climate?
Well, we are seeing overall in the nonprofit sector, we're increasingly focused on retaining our current and existing donors because we know that nurturing these current donor relationships is more cost effective than constantly trying to bring in new ones. I was reading once in a newspaper or some advertising journal that it costs 7 times more to bring in a new donor or customer than it does to get renewed business or a renewed gift from a current donor.
That is a
As
staggering
I said,
statistic.
love on your donors and keep them close. Also, your lapsed donors are also a wonderful source. Instead of beating my head against the wall, oh, we need new donors. I wish I had a dime for every time I've heard somebody say, oh, we need new donors. You need to keep the donors you have and invite the donors who've already invested in you, who love and support you, but they drifted away, bring them back to the fold. They're your best prospects.
Your warm leads, yeah.
And then you can use segmentation to create more personalized engagement strategies for your major donors, your mid-level, your grassroots donors, and you sort of tailor your communication both ways, your asks and also your donor information to each segment sort of preferences and their capacity. You can use data analytics. You should absolutely use data to segment your donor base and to try to do some wealth screening research and invite people to increase their gift to higher levels. You know, these are standard fundraising approaches. The challenge is balancing attention. Are we going to shower attention on our smaller everyday donors, on our mid-level donors, or on our major donors? And you've got to make some key decisions because you've got to have the major donors because they are a very substantial part of your individual giving revenue,
Yeah.
and yet you don't want to neglect these other people. They're the donors of the future. They're the potential legacy gift donors as well. So don't spread yourself too thin, but make sure you have real clear strategies for each of these groups.
Oh, I love that. Just so just lining it up and writing it down, perhaps saying it out loud to your team, like, here's how we will approach each of these individual groups. That's really wonderful
And
advice.
also, people have like an annual meeting, which feel, oh my God, do I want to go to an annual meeting? But if it's a donor, you can turn your annual meeting into a donor celebration. Or we're honoring all of our donors. Please come. We're having a picnic. Now that can be your annual meeting. So be creative about the way you reach out and touch your donors and invite them in, and reach out. Reach out. I know you have a question about joy. Reach out with joy. Reach out with optimism. Have fun. Life is short. Times are hard. Your donors need a little light in their lives too. And you can bring that light into your donors' eyes and into their hearts and their households by being cheerful, by being optimistic. Even if you've lost all your money, we have a plan and we're going to help these people. We invite you to get on this bandwagon and let's do it all together, create a community. So I do think that we treat fundraising like drudgery sometimes. It's like, oh, I remember when I was a frontline fundraiser, I had to write a new thank you letter every year, and I'm going, oh, That's before Chat GPT, of
That's
course.
true. That's what I was just thinking. That would not be hard now.
Emails were so boring
Yeah.
because that was the era of on behalf of blah, blah, blah. But instead, you can write a thank you letter like, we are so thrilled to receive your gift. People don't ever use that. They're too afraid. You can't say we were so thrilled to receive your gift. They say, oh, thank you. We are so grateful for your contribution. So the more you can loosen up and be real, be genuine, authentic, especially in these days of shifting media personas and media consumption habits, being more genuine and authentic and transparent can make a big difference.
It just feels like a breath of fresh air, both what you're saying and the idea of, actually allowing some joy into that. And you're right. My last question here is that the Gail is known for talking about joy in fundraising, and it's already come out. She couldn't keep it away from us. But so do you have any strategies for organizations around how, maybe even for individual fundraisers, around how they can kind of keep optimism high, even if they're not feeling it, as you mentioned, like even if it doesn't feel like it's like radiating from you in the moment? What are your strategies for keeping people keeping their focus on the joy?
Well, I had a coaching call with one of our clients exactly on this topic. And it was so interesting to me that I create, by the way, I invite you all to connect with me on LinkedIn because I post videos up there and I'll also
Great LinkedIn account, let me tell you. She knows what she's talking
post,
about with the posting.
post videos on our Gail Perry group page as well. But so these fundraisers were dealing with organizational drama. And there's nothing more intriguing than drama. Everybody's going to talk about it. Oh, we feel so bad. Oh, we can't do anything. We have to talk about the problems all the time. And so but they still had goals they had to meet. So my advice to them was identify your top 10 or 20 favorite donors and go see them and communicate with them. Make it easy for yourself. Have some fun, and everybody, we can choose to have fun and we can choose to deal with positive people, even
Yeah.
if the world is falling apart around us, I encourage you to think small. If times are really hard for you personally, self-care. I have my meditation practice, I have my walks, I have my workout program. It's more important than ever to nurture yourself so that you have something to give the rest of the world.
Well, Gail has teed up my slide that I'll show you in a minute for our A Better Conference, which is our self-care and nonprofit education conference that BetterUnite puts on in September. That I hope, Gail, I think you're busy at the time that we talk to your team, but if that you'll make it too soon. But that is the point, and why and how we conceived of this is, nonprofit and fundraisers and people that work with nonprofits. There's a high turnover rate in our industry, and a lot of that comes from burnout, and caring for the whole human of the fundraiser themselves is such a key point. So any executive directors we have on here or board members, that care for your people. It's very important.
Absolutely,
I love
absolutely.
it. Well, we've got another question here from Julia, and Julia says, Gail, love you and your warm Southern style. Since many individuals are now DAF holders, hence increase in foundation giving, I would love your help to unmuddy these waters. How do we build these relationships when they've intentionally put up some boundaries?
Well, I'm hearing that it's a myth that there are too many boundaries between DAF donors and us. And I think there are boundaries. And I think it's hard work to identify the DAF donors in your database. And let me tell you a story. When you have a retirement account, you get to a certain age and you're forced to take what they call qualified minimum distributions out of your retirement account, and you have to pay income tax on them. My husband got to the point where he needed to take distributions from his retirement account, and he decided to gift them. A lot of people make gifts of these amounts. He gifted to the local Habitat for Humanity, and he's very proud to be doing this, just thrilled. And do you know he never, ever, ever got a thank you note?
Interesting, because they didn't know who
And
he
he
was.
said, who are these people? I'm not, I'm, and he quit giving to them. And so I know the Habitat people. And so I said to them, I said, you have just lost a major donor prospect. And they said, whoa. And the person who runs the gift processing said that we had a name, but we didn't have any other information. However, they could have Googled.
Yeah, at this point you
He had
can.
gone on a house tour invited by one of his fellow guy friends, and he had been to the gala. And so they accepted the gift with just a name and no address, and they didn't make any extra effort
Hmm.
at who was behind the gift. So that is an example of the kind of roadblocks we have as fundraising teams when we have these gifts that float in with just a Schwab or Fidelity name. You have to do some research work, and often you can find the name and find an address and make a thank you. I mean, the Fidelity people say, oh, only 3% of our donors really want to be anonymous and everybody else is happy, but I don't think they make it very easy.
That you're really both. Yeah, exactly. That's they make it a little bit easier.
And also, we're now seeing people putting DAFs. I'm on the board of the Botanical Garden here at University of North Carolina, and whenever we do an appeal, would you like to make the gift from your DAF? You know, we are including DAF language in all of our fundraising and all of our donor messaging. And so that I think is a new trend that everybody needs to hop on right now. That and the legacy gift, are we in your will? Just add those two things. Those would be suggestions I would suggest people make right now.
Oh, I love that. Those are two easy to make additions to your thank you note or to your, your newsletter or your pages, your donation pages. It's just a wonderful idea. There's also some more fluid ways in Better Unite. You can have an integration with Chariot so that you can, add in a DAF pay option when it's possible. That's a little more streamlined. But honestly, I find that most folks are typically a lot of times they're going through the traditional channels and still making it kind of decently hard for us to find out who they are.
Yeah.
Well, Gail, it was such, oh, sorry, go ahead. Did you have more on that?
I invite everybody, if you would like a little dose of Gail in your inbox every Friday, subscribe to our Friday newsletter. We send out a little cheerful note with some how-tos and some advice about fundraising trends every Friday morning. We're skipping 4th of July, I will say, giving ourselves a vacation, but just join our crowd if you'd like to hang out with us.
I've added into the chat the Gail Perry group, her site, then pointed you to the Capital Campaign Resource Center, but click around on their site and you can get to the newsletter sign up. Also, I've added in Gail's LinkedIn profile as well as Gail Perry group so everyone can sign up for the Thursday webinar and
And
we
if,
make sure that everyone gets all of the good Gail insight.
and if you're planning a capital campaign, we'll happy to have a free strategy session with you. We are a capital campaign company specializes in big gifts and mega donors. So happy to guide you in that area.
I love that. All right. Well, that teed me up perfectly then sorry, here, let me share my screen to share that if you have any questions for Gail, support at betterunite.com. Our team will quickly get those over to Gail and she can reply to you. And also, I know that we've got some folks that are not current Better Unite users. So if you've got questions about who and what Better Unite is and a better conference, you can email sales@betterunite.com. A better conference is my next slide. So here's our September 11th and 12th conference in Austin. I hope you'll come and join us. It's the best smelling conference you're going to go to. We have essential oils and meditation and yoga and massage and healthy food and a juice bar and really everything you can want, plus amazing content so that you're being educated as well as taking care of your body and your spirit. And then if of course you want any more information, you want to actually see Better Unite in action, please scan the QR code there. Gail, thank you so much for joining me today. It was such a fun conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of information you asked, and we covered a lot of ground. So everybody, thank you so much. Go forward, be positive, have some fun, and let's change the world.
Oh, I can't think of a better way to end. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you, everybody. Let's go do some good. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.